And today's video is all about how to support a Mini using Lychee Slicer. At the time of making this video, Lychee Slicer just released our auto supports version 2. Head over to the Lychee Slicer Discord, download that beta over there, and you can try it out if you are a member of Lychee Plus or the Lychee Library. And all of these miniatures right in front of you were pre-supported using that Lychee Slicer version 2 in only a couple seconds. I basically ran the algorithm and printed them. Out of all these models, only 2 of them had minor issues. All the supports were incredibly easy to remove, and all the support damage is very, very minimal. It's still something in the works, so it's not perfect, but I think for like an early beta version, it is looking incredibly promising. And given that miniatures are the most 3D printed thing within this space, I think it's a really good skill to have to know how to support them yourself, or if you come up with an object that's pre-supported and maybe it's not done well, or you want to be able to look at it first and determine if it is well or not, it's still a skill set you really want to have. So first thing, we need a model. For that, I'm going to head over to the Lychee Library and I'm going to grab this Thor by Everon. Just going to click on it right here and click on download. That's going to download one that actually is pre-supported. However, we want to learn something today, so I'm going to go through and I'm going to delete those pre-supports. Let's click on them, go to prepare, and I'm just going to grab them all and hit delete. All right, so the very first thing I need to do is make sure the orientation is what I would want to do. Everyone has a slightly different way of doing it. Mine might be different from this artist. The way to do this is I'm just going to look at it from underneath and just kind of see the overhang. So far, everything looks okay, but what I remember is that this guy has, well, Thor's hammer. And if I look at it from the bottom, I can't really see the bottom of Thor's hammer from underneath this character. So what that means is I'm going to go over to layout and hit R for rotate. And I'm just going to tilt this guy over a little bit, maybe even back a little bit more till I expose that hammer. I want this edge right here to be visible from the bottom of the build plate. That way the supports can reach from the build plate all the way to the hammer. So now that this guy's orientated in a way that I think is going to be a little bit easier, let's get to supporting. For that, I'm going to click on prepare, move my slider all the way up so I can get a full view of what's going on. Now, just looking at this model right here, let's just kind of explain what goes through my head. The first thing is, of course, I want the feet, the arm, and the hammer. These are what I call key components. If I support all of these key components pretty well, overall, the vast majority of this model is going to print. After that, I'm only going to worry about the smaller islands and details, and I'm going to do it in that order. Major key components, and then smaller islands, and then overhangs. And then finally, at the very, very end, I might worry about stabilization, and I can get to that part towards the end of this video. So first, the key components we've identified are the arm, the feet, and the hammer. Let's isolate just the feet first to get an idea of what that looks like. I'm going to use the slider right here just to drag it down until the only thing I can see are the feet. And so these are the first things I want to support. To do that, make sure support is selected, and I'm going to grab my heavy. The reason for that being the bottom of these feet are never going to be seen in the light of day again once they're glued onto a base or something. So I'm going to use some heavy supports. My heavy support tip is 0.4 millimeters. That's the largest that I use for anything from minis to like massive models. The difference is maybe for massive models, I use lots of supports, and for mini, I'll just use less. First thing I want to do is I want to grab the very, very bottom. To do that, I'm just going to move down until you see that white mark right there. What's the very bottom, that's where I'm going to place the support. Now, I want to see this support from a different view. So wherever my cursor is, and if I hit F on my keyboard, the camera is going to move to where the mouse was. That's going to center it. That way, when I rotate, it's going to be centered around where my mouse was at the time. You'll see if I leave my mouse here and I hit F, it moves. But if I keep hitting F, it doesn't do anything. If I move it around, hit F, it moves again. So anyway, really good trick right there to center your camera. From here, I can see that the support isn't overhanging. I wouldn't want it to look like this, where it's overhanging. I want it to be slightly underneath. If I want it to be a little bit further away from the edge, I'll hit space. Make sure that support's selected, hit space, and then just kind of drag that further away, and it's a little bit better. So from here, I'm just going to go through and place a few more supports. Again, this is underneath the model. I don't care. So I'm going to kind of grotesquely over support the feet here. We'll do the next one, same thing. Click it, hit F, rotate. Probably could be a little bit further away, right there. And let's add a few more supports onto this foot just to over support it. That way I know that leg isn't going to fail. All right, so the legs are done. Also, what's finished is the short supports. The short supports, I want them to be straight. But the taller supports, I want to use the Lychee Slicer grid supports to save some resin and complexity and just avoid some issues. So now I'm going to go over to structure and make sure I turn snap to grid on. And I'm going to keep it on for the rest of this video. So from now, I'm just going to move the slider up and let's isolate that arm right there because that's the next key feature moving up. Let's get that arm nice and centered. And let's just kind of move this back down until that arm is isolated, just about right there. That's good enough. If I want to dial it in, I can use the up and arrow keys on my keyboard to kind of go through the layers one at a time. But right here is going to be good enough for what I'm looking for. So now let's look at this arm and just get an idea about kind of how big it is. It's in a weird position where it's kind of, you know, parallel to the build plate, the forearm right here. Not the best, but it's just the way it's going to have to be for the reason for the hammer and some other reasons. It's orientated this way. But it's not a big deal. The biggest island I want to think about right now is just this hand. So right here, I'm probably going to place a heavy. This might be the very last heavy I use for this entire model. We'll see how it goes. Actually, no, I might use one more here on the back of the arm, just as this thing's, it's kind of big. And I want to make sure that both the hand and the elbow are well supported. And then the interior, I can use smaller supports, or, you know, between the two, smaller supports. And so I want to try to squeeze one here in the back where it won't cause too much damage to the model. I think the best place for that is probably right here on the top. You can see my support tip is slightly bigger than the feature it's attached to. So I'm going to probably go down to a medium heavy. And that's looking a little bit better. All right, so I think that major island is done. Now let's move to some of these smaller ones. What I have right here is these belt buckles. I think they kind of stick out a little bit. They're going to be really easy to place a support tip to kind of, you know, reinforce between the arm and the elbow. The medium heavy here is probably a little bit big. Let's go down to just a regular medium. That's looking better. We'll put one on each one. Okay. And we can see here we got the snap to grid working, so these supports are kind of, you know, auto-parenting together. Let's move to the next key feature. That's probably going to be the hammer. So we'll scroll up, get that hammer right there. Let's move that back down, just get an idea of how big that is. That's the island we have to kind of make sure we think it's going to print. I'm going to start at the lowest point, and I'm going to go back to my heavy support. I'm probably only going to place one heavy support on the corner of this guy. Hit F on my keyboard. Let's make sure it's not right on that support tip right there. And I think from here we're going to move down to like a medium heavy and place one there. And if we move this down a little bit, what we're going to see is that the way this hammer prints, or the way it's supported, is it's kind of coming up like a little bit of a triangle, where this is the lowest and this corner right here is printing last. You can kind of tell by the shape. So if we support basically the part that's lower on the build plate first, and it builds onto itself. Sorry, some word vomit there. By the time we get to basically this thing right here, so what that means is as I get further and further away from that bottom tip, I can use smaller and smaller support tips. So if I come up here, maybe like halfway between these two, I'm going to need another one. And this one I think I can get away with a medium. And then one kind of in the center, because remember, this is building up as a triangle. So maybe one in the center. At that point, I can go to a much smaller support tip, because at this point, I'm pretty sure this thing would print. I'm worried more about like overhang, layering, and flaking. But this key component at this point is probably done. And so we'll come back to the overhangs and islands. So let's just make sure there's not anything else that I could consider to be a key component. Quite possibly the back of his cloak right here could be a key component right down here. So let's try to isolate that one again. Move my slider down. We can see what just that looks like. It's a pretty big overhang right there that really sticks out. It's not very heavy because it's kind of thin. But let's place at least one medium heavy there and one there. Maybe one more on this side of it, just like right there. And I think that's it for that one. There's obviously some islands that haven't been supported yet. What about the front of his cloak? Yeah, we probably got one thing just right there and one more right there. So I think as far as the weight is concerned and the pill force, we're taken care of. Now we're going to start searching for islands and, you know, overhangs and stuff like that. For that, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click on the model, go over to island, and I'm going to do a detailed island search with a filter on of 0.03 millimeters, which means any islands that are less than 0.03 millimeters squared, not cubed, squared, will be filtered out. Let's click on search selected. And now I've got 49 islands that haven't been supported yet. This is where I can just click on show, and it's going to go through and start cycling these islands. I can look at each one individually and determine which size of support tip I want to use, just based upon what I'm seeing. The foot right here is going to be supported by these larger ones. So by the time we get here, it doesn't need much. So I'm just going to place probably a light. Let's delete that. Not the best way to do it. I put it right on the bottom, just like that. And if I want to, because we've got a bit of an overhang here, I can just do 3 of them. The light supports are very, very small. I'm not worried about support tip damage. When we come up to this one right here, this one's very, very tiny. I may put like ultralight, and honestly, I may even move that one a little bit and make it even slightly smaller. That is a tiny, tiny overhang. May not even be worth doing in the first place, to be honest. When we come up to these bigger overhangs on the back of his cloak, I'm probably going to want something a little bit bigger. So let's reset that back to a light. The one down here, it's kind of behind it. Let's probably put that one as like a medium because we're on this. It's hard to tell, but there's actually 2 layers to this tunic he's got on. And so this bottom one, we just want to make sure we get a few supports on it. I want that to have a path to the ground right there. Getting a little close. We can just move it over like that. We can probably recalculate this guy. There we go. That's better. And we got a little island right here on the tip. That's probably going to be like an ultralight. That's really, really small support tip right there. We probably want it right in the center. Just right there is enough to get that, the very bottom of that cloak going. We got another one right here. I'll probably just put another little tiny support there. That's probably okay. And then one more in between the gap. That's just because I don't trust that one support tip, this little one right here, to do all the work. So I'm going to have the other one next to it just to kind of help it out. All right, let's click on our arrow and look at the next island. Oh, we're here on the other foot. These are really, really small. I don't know if I really, that one's so small. We'll be on ultralight. Same thing on this one, ultralight. That's not an island there. I have to worry about that. That's the bottom half. Let's move up. We've got this texture right here on the arm. For the texture, this is where I don't want to be plastering supports all over the texture. You know, something like this where I'm just making a big mess of it. And now I've got all this damage on the texture. I really only need a couple. And I'm also going to make these support tips really, really small. So, see how I got some support structure underneath it? I can actually use that to make a different type of support. So what I'm going to do to get this going is I'm going to place one support tip right here. And see how this connects down there on that support shaft existing one? I can even drag that around if I want to. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this ball smaller and make the support tip even smaller. Let's say like 1.4, let's go all the way down to 1.2. Really, really small support tip. Now with this one selected, I can move it around to a better spot. Let's probably put it maybe right here. Now with this guy selected, I can make copies of this one. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this one all the way down from the support tip size down to where it's connected to this larger support shaft. And that's going to make it really, really easy to place a bunch of these. And I do that by holding Shift and Alt, and it's going to make a copy of that one. And I can come through here and just kind of place these. There's not like a great place to put them. There's like really bad places and not so good places, and that's a bad place. Delete that one, replace it maybe right there. It's kind of hard with the way that texture is doing it, but that's probably good enough right there. Now let's get this arm. If we just don't change anything, where I'm actually going to use the last one that I used, which is this guy right here. I don't want that for the knuckles. I'm going to go back and just re-click on ultralight and just replace it. Now we're going to go over to the texture over here. This texture is super, super small. It's tiny. Even if I go back to this really small tip I made and I put it on it, you're going to see the support tip itself is almost as big as the texture. So I'm probably even going to go smaller on that one. Let's say like, geez, I can't go too small. Maybe 0.01, as small as I really dare to go. And I can do the same thing as I did before, hold Shift and Alt, and I can just place a couple of them here. I don't think I need that many. At that point, we're probably done. And I can even hold Shift and Alt and do the same thing on the ones up here. Just place a couple of them. Again, I'm probably putting more damage on this model than I'm actually saving by hitting all those islands, but at least it's going to help out with this whole overhang right here. Because what I don't want to have happen is I don't want this whole like armor plate to fail. So these support tips that are on the islands are actually going to double up as keeping that piece of armor from failing and grabbing a few of those islands. And I think that's going to be enough to do it, just like that. Okay. The next thing moving up is we got this hair. That hair is a little bigger. Let's go back up to my light and just kind of position it where I want it to be. And that's a big piece of hair for one support. I don't trust one support to do, a full structure. So I'm going to come in and just add one more, a little bit higher. Probably find a different angle, something like that. And this one's going to be an ultralight, very small. And I trust 2. I don't trust 1, but I can trust 2. Over here, this is a little bit larger. Let's see, do I trust a light on that? I'll trust a couple lights. Do like 2 there, 1 there, 1 there, and probably 1 more. Let's see, does that make, no, that doesn't make connection with the body. That's a small island right here. Let's make that an ultralight. And even smaller right on that very, very small island right there. I trust that. Underneath the arm, kind of under here, we've got some armor plating and some rings. We're just going to go through and place a couple support tips on that. These are tiny. I mean, really, really small. Let's place a couple minis, like 3 minis. Okay, that's good. The belt buckle is, that's so tiny. Let's see. Do I have a good way for that? Yeah. We'll do another mini. Right on that belt buckle. I don't like where that placed. Let's readjust that. Like right there. Okay. That's probably done. And you can see right now I'm just going through and just kind of filling in all these tiny islands at this point. And I'm using some really small support tips on really small islands and slightly bigger. But as you can see, it's kind of, everything's a case-by-case basis. So there's not, you can just use the same support tip size and just kind of blast everything. I don't like supporting that way. I like doing everything on a one-by-one basis. It does take longer, but ultimately, I think the end result is significantly better. Moving up, there's 25 left. I probably won't hit all 25 of them, to be honest. We've got a little belt buckle ring. I probably want that one to be an ultralight. Let's click on that. Yeah, it's going to be fine. All right. We've got something in his beard, if I remember right. We have a couple in his beard. Now, sometimes you have to place a support that's going to stay on the model permanently. It's just going to be kind of hidden underneath features. An example of that is his beard right here. Right here, there's a little bit of an overhang. If we place a support tip right there, you can kind of see it's, I don't know if you can see or not, it's hard. But it's, when we're looking at this model, you're never going to see that support tip, but it's going to just kind of help that thing print. And there's a couple underneath his beard we're going to grab that are going to be the same way. I'm going to snap it there, and if I hold down Control and Alt, I can actually control where the base goes. And I put that tip in the wrong spot. Same thing. Let's do that again. There and there. Maybe hit, let's hide that one a little bit better. There and over there. Oh, I keep missing that one. Here, let's change our approach on this one. I'm going to take my clipping down so I have a better idea of what's going on. Change my angle, and now I can see the very bottom of this guy. That is the much better approach. Just change the clipping so I can see what's going on. Oh, we got one more little tuft of hair right here. I'm going to place it there and probably find a good spot. There's not a great spot for that one. Wherever I put it, it's going to cause some damage. Maybe right there, you won't notice the damage as that support tip breaks off. You might. Let's make this thing just a little bit smaller. That's one of those ones where maybe it's better. I'm actually going to leave that one unsupported. If this little tip kind of flattens out by a couple layers because it's unsupported, I think that's going to look better than some damage from removing that support tip. So we're going to leave that one undone. Now we're getting to some larger ones over here on this this whole axe handle or hammer in the store. Let's do like a medium again on that one. I don't want it to fail. I want it to have some extra structure. Put it just like right there. Okay, maybe a couple more mediums here. Just to make sure things are nice and stable on some of these larger islands. Okay, now let's move to a light in between these guys. If I want to, I can come in here and kind of adjust these support tips just so they're a little bit more onto the features. And one more mini right there. Okay, that's going to be good enough. Now let's get the lightning bolt. We're going to do probably a medium on that guy. And then some lights up above the overhangs just to make sure we don't get a failure there. Let's get one more next to the medium. Little extra structure, a little extra support. And moving up. Let's do 2 there. 1 there. We don't need much. There's a lot of structure of the lightning itself that's going to help us out there. And let's move to ultralight on these little tiny islands. We've got an overhang. Looks like we could reach the overhang with a path to ground. That's good. Same there. That one I'm not going to support. And I am going to grab that right there. Okay. So now I want to get the overhang of the rest of this hammer. I kind of talked about that earlier, that I'll come back in and fill this one in. I'm going to be using a light on that. And we'll go through and just kind of place a few more just for that overhang. Just like that. And that should be more than enough. And those lights are going to come off really easy. It's just to make sure I don't get any layer peeling. When I look at this from far away, I'm not super satisfied with this stability. So let's go and add a couple more lights. Just like that. Same thing on that one. I'm not satisfied with this being super stable with just one support tip. So I'm going to add a couple on each side. And then maybe further down a couple more. Just till I feel like that haft is a little bit better off. We may even have to come down here and do something like this. Let's go ultralight. Move that down to the very end and then just place something like that. Not a lot of support damage. I think it's going to work out just fine. Okay. I think we're getting really, really close. Let's just look at these last islands, see if there's anything I want to grab. Well, let's put one there. Really, really small. We can change it so I'm only showing the support tips. I can get a just better idea of what's going on. Yeah, I think that's okay. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Don't want to support those two, but let's grab this one on the belt. I don't know. That's going to be there permanently. I'm just going to click on delete, which is going to delete that island. So I can kind of look at it without the overhang, without that, orb thing on it. Let's see. I don't love that either. And then one more right there. Move that up a little bit, shrink it down. All right. Change my visibility to show all again. Okay, so now we've basically got this guy. He's pretty much all done and supported. The only thing we need to do now is add some bracing so these really, really tall ones right here don't kind of wobble around and cause issues. That's really easy to do in Lychee Slicer. I'm just going to go over to structure. And here there's some presets. To give you an idea of what these presets can look like, let's do the default bracing. Make sure I select him, click on add update bracing. And you see the bracing right here is actually pretty good. This is going to be very structural. But for me personally, I think it's a little too structural. And again, that's just my own opinion. I like to use one that I called For Science that I created in another video. You can go check that one out where I cover all the presets and settings within the bracing menu, and make sure to like and subscribe while you're there. And now that it's all supported, all I have to do is print it. For that, I'm going to go over to Export. Make sure that I select the printer that I want to use. For this one, I'm going to be using the GK3 Pro, and I'm going to be using this resin profile right here, which is a blend of some resins I've been playing with right now. I'm just using it because it happens to be what's in the printer. I'm going to be doing it 30 UM. So let's get this guy slicing, and then let's also look at that time lapse that I recorded during this print. And here they are, fully printed. I can definitely see there's one issue, and that's the beard, where I placed those supports that would be kind of hidden forever. It appears I probably should have used slightly thicker supports because if we look real close on the beard, there's a little bit of a failure there. So what I would do here is I'd open up the .lys that I always save, go back in, add a few more supports right there on the chin, reprint it, and then I would call it good. But as of right now, let's just see how easy these supports are to remove. I'm gonna start just by kind of just removing the supports off of the hammer. I like to do it this way if I'm actually taking my time, and just kind of slowly peel them away from the model. This is because if I rip the model straight out, sometimes those supports, they're like little claws, they can kind of scratch it when it's coming down. So I take the taller ones and I just kind of rip them out like that. Once I get those ones freed up, the rest of the body should just come off without really any issue whatsoever. And there we go, he's free now from all the supports. And ultimately, he turned out really, really well. Yeah, the only issue I have right there is on the beard itself. So yeah, I'll just go fix that, reprint it, and I think I'll have myself a really good mini. There we go. Not that you'll see him back there anyway. But anyway, by now you know the drill. Make sure to like and subscribe to the Lychee YouTube channel. It really helps for me to continue making content like this for you. If you haven't already, join us on the Lychee Slicer Discord. I'd love it if you came and said hello. And as always, thank you for watching, and have yourself a good day.